Welcome back. All right, so tonight, and this will post to the channel on Saturday. Tonight, news came out that AT&T Sportsnet, which is also associated with Root, those networks are they're poof. It's just poof. And this kind of surprised me. So we know about Ballys. We know about Ballys. The teams at the top are all Bally's network teams that could very well be off the air whenever, although it should last till the end of the regular season. AT&T, nope. Now they're owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. So Warner Brothers Discovery, at one point in time, the AT&T Sportsnet channels were up for sale, and they didn't like the offers, so they decided, fine, we'll just keep them. That was a mistake. They've been losing money right, left, and center. Regional sports networks have been losing money a lot. And it really comes down to, it's a market where I think people overinflate how much money there is in it. It kind of reminds me of when you hear about an arena and they're like, this is going to bring billions of dollars to this city and you guys are going to love it. And then it doesn't. And I've talked about that in videos before too. We're going to have a vote in May in Tempe, Arizona to see whether or not, the Coyotes build that building. And they probably will. But there are promises and pie in the sky things that get said that really can't be followed through on. Now with regional sports networks, it's simple. You have the exclusive rights to that team's broadcast. But there's a limit. So you're in that small area, right? And I think the NHL needs to rethink the business model. This is further proof that the business model has completely failed. So Bally's, you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 teams that are all going to be in need of a new network. Now you're up to 15. You're up to about half the league essentially being homeless in terms of regional sports rights, right? So until the end of March, that's how long teams have to negotiate with Warner Brothers Discovery. And they're not taking any more losses. They're like, no, this has gone off our networks. We're done with it. We're losing money right, left, and center. And I mean, it really is. It's all sports. This isn't just a hockey thing. This is going to affect all sports. So teams can have all the broadcasting equipment, everything. They're saying, fine, you guys negotiate with us. You can have the rights. You can have all the equipment, everything you want. Take it. They don't want it because it's going to cost them money. What are they going to do? They're going to store it in inventory? No. You're not going to store that because you're not going to get back into the regional sports market. Major League Baseball, the NBA, and the NHL have all announced that they have backup plans to stream games. And I think the NHL needs to rethink things, especially on the American side, because this is all American teams being affected, right? So where does it work? Well, NBC Sports, at this point, I haven't heard anything about NBC Sports having the same kind of a problem. Although, of course, NBC had the rights to the NHL and does not have exclusive rights to the NHL any longer. ESPN got those rights. TNT with rights to that as well. So, NBC Sports has Chicago, Philadelphia, San Jose, and Washington. They're well done. The broadcasts on NBC Sports are smart. And I think when I look at the American broadcasts, it's a fine line. You've got to remember you're trying to win over new fans, which, of course, in Canada, they don't really have to worry about so much because Canadians grow up with hockey. Some parts of America, you just don't. Some parts of the States, you don't. So there does need to be some level of explanation. It's something that I try to do on the channel too, keeping in mind that there are going to be new fans, especially with 2 new teams in the last, 7 years. There's going to be new fans to the game, and there are new fans being converted all the time. So I think it's important for me to explain things and keep it as simple as possible and just have a really straightforward approach. That's why I keep the stats as simple as possible. I don't just fill the board with all these fancy stat numbers, though I know the fancy stat numbers. I follow the fancy stat numbers. I think it's important to keep it as simple as possible. And I think the NHL needs to do that too. Now, it doesn't mean putting a tail on the puck, Anaheim. It doesn't mean, having it where during a power play, one player is highlighted and that player's name is They did that with Jamie Benn the other night. I think it was ESPN where they did that, or it was TNT. And I was like, well, that's distracting because you've got a circle underneath the player and their name over top. Well, that makes me feel like it's a video game, which is fine, but that should be an option. So the way that this ideally I thought would be done, they still haven't done this, is to have 2 options for a broadcast. So you load up the NHL app. The NHL app, you have access to all games for a subscription fee, like you have with Netflix, like you have with Disney, and have the price point about the same. So it's about, say, $8.99 a month. $8.99 a month, you can watch all the NHL games. That's it. And if you've never been a subscriber before, you get first month free. So you have access to all 32 teams. And that's the key thing too, I think, is you'd have to make it so it's access to all 32 teams. And then you'd have the option. You'd have a regular broadcast and what you would call an enhanced broadcast, where if you want puck trails, you can have puck trails. If you want it to tell you who all the players are, you can have that. You can have all of the stats on the screen as well in an enhanced thing. They have this technology for this now. They have that technology, and I think it's great they use it sometimes, but it's weird how they use it. Like, I watch, this guy skated at 35 kilometers an hour this time out, and it's like, oh, okay, of course, miles an hour if you're on the American side, around 20 miles an hour, which is fine. But they seem to use it here and there and kind of in spots, and I was really excited for the player tracking. You've got the jerseys all bulge out at the back, and you're like, oh, that's all the tracking. But I don't think they've used it to its utmost. And I think for the NHL to do this, they honestly shouldn't be using all of the regionals. Now, there are some regional broadcasts that would stay. Obviously, NESN with Boston, that's stable. The MSG networks with Buffalo, New Jersey, Islanders, Rangers, those are stable. I don't know how you could make my model work with them other than to say the enhanced version may not be available on their broadcast. The enhanced version might be available on others. Maybe make an enhanced game every night, right? Maybe there's one broadcast where you can watch the enhanced version with all the puck trails and whatever else you want, right? You'd have the option. You can just click on things and know that showed up. Or you can do a replay and all that fun stuff. I think the NHL needs to make it so that it's very, very interactive, very user-friendly, and good for people getting into the game. I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to mention it again. I have had fans that I've met in real life, mostly on the U.S. side, but there have been some Canadians here as well, too, that are maybe learning the game, where they'll ask me about something basic. Like, I don't want to admit this, but I don't really understand icing. Offside kind of confuses me a bit. Or what is goalie interference? That one comes up a lot. I'm not talking about it in this video, but I have no problem with taking my time and explaining all this, right? And I think for the NHL, it's important to have, during broadcasts, the ability to make it so that if I'm coming into a game and I am a veteran watcher of hockey, I don't need all the fancy stuff. And as I mentioned about the ads on the boards, I should be able to pay so that I don't have to see the ads on the board. There's ads-free versions of Netflix, of Disney, ads-free for everything. Why not for the NHL as well? Even no commercials, because if right now with Sportsnet Now you get one ad and then it just goes to a Sportsnet Now screen. With the ESPN Plus broadcasts, I don't get commercials on NHL Center Ice, because I guess that's the way that the feeds work. I just don't get commercials. So I just get, in between when the commercial break would be on, I just get to see the ice crew, and it's basically quiet. Now, when they first started with the ESPN Plus and with the TNT, I was able to actually hear the announcers during the commercial break and what they were saying, which was sometimes entertaining and kind of funny. But on the American side of things, they need to fix this, but they need to make it too so that, and I mentioned this before, I'll mention it here again too, because I think it's worthy of repeating. When I go to the States, I should still be able to watch. So when I have Netflix and I go to the States, I can still watch in the States. Oh wait, Netflix is trying to make that crackdown happen with Canadians. That may be a thing that's not working, and that's the thing. Make your product more user-friendly than everybody else's. It seems like the NBA gets it. The NBA has some really cool technology they've started using, which I've seen people talking about and saying, why doesn't the NHL do this? And I don't have an answer to that. They should. They absolutely should. It should be very user-friendly because they are behind the other major networks, or the other major leagues, I should say, and I guess behind the other networks too when it comes to the broadcasting ratings. This is something they should be able to fix. And in a way, maybe with Ballys and ATT Sportsnet, which is also Root, that's why Seattle's in there. So this affects Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Vegas, this news today. Maybe this will be the impetus for the NHL to change things. Now, the one thing with this is, if you lose these, and you're losing these too, right? You're not losing MSG, you're not losing NBC Sports, NESN, or the headache for Colorado fans that is Altitude, which you may not be able to watch because you're an Avalanche fan and you're not allowed depending on who your provider is. It's one of those things, and I know when the NHL Network stopped being on my TV, it drove me crazy. I could not understand why the NHL Network went away. But when I go to the States and I have access to the NHL Network, I'm like, I wish I had this at home, but I don't. At any rate, in Canada, things are a little bit simpler. So you've got the regional broadcasts, so you get blacked out unless you have you're willing to pay for the package to not be blacked out. So you've got Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Vancouver are all on Sportsnet. On TSN, you've got now Montreal also has TVA broadcasting on Saturdays. RDS has the rights to Montreal and Ottawa as well. It is kind of funny if I'm scrolling through looking for a broadcast and I go to either an Ottawa or Montreal broadcast and I'm kind of a little bit rattled because there's so many games starting at the same time. And then I realize I picked the French feed and I'm like, okay. So I mean, I learned a lot of hockey words watching French broadcasts as a kid. Not looking forward to that right now. So yeah, I stay with the English feeds. And of course, Winnipeg is on TSN as well. TSN might be the best broadcasting when it comes to hockey. Honestly, I think in the States the NBC feeds are very good. I would also say that MSG treats people like they're hockey fans right out of the gate. MSG, I don't think caters as much. So if you're new to the game, if you're new and you're trying to figure things out, I think because of Seattle being new to the league, I hear them explaining things a lot. Vegas still does at times. And I mean, with Bally's, the southern based ones like Anaheim, that's why you've got the puck trail, obviously. Arizona, Carolina, on some level, Dallas, Florida, they will explain some things because I think they understand that the market they're in, they might have some casuals that are tuning in. But there needs to be a more user friendly interface. And I don't think that we're going to see this change. I think the movement away from regional sports networks will continue. And, adapt or die has been a saying for a very long time. And right now is the time for the NHL to adapt before the TV product, as we know it, ends up where we're just listening on the radio. And I love listening to hockey games on the radio. It takes me back to the 80s when not every game was on TV. For the Canucks, you might have had, when I was a kid, I think maybe 20 games a year were on TV. It doesn't feel like it was very many because it was on BC TV. It wasn't on TSN or Sportsnet. So, yeah, you might get a Canucks. It was usually just the home games, and it wasn't necessarily all of them. So I listened on the radio a lot. Well, it's 2023. We don't have to do that anymore. So the NHL needs to come up with a system that I think if they came up with something that was affordable, that was portable, so I can take that on the road. If I'm at a friend's house and I want to watch a game, but they've got their TV on, I should be able to just load it up on my phone, have the sound off, have the captions on, and then I can follow around. And I think something like that would be great. NHL Live went away. I still think that was a bad call. Because now we're seeing the regional sports networks type. Bring back NHL Live. Bring it back. Make it work. And make it work in every market on both sides of the border. I know about Rogers. I'm aware of Rogers and their reach. And that Rogers, with Sportsnet now made this big decision. And the NHL kind of, allowed for it. But again, when I'm traveling in the States, I can't access Sportsnet now. And I may not be able to access any of the other broadcasts either. And the streaming sites that people will mention, like, oh, you should try these out. It was a nightmare. I had 2 days of trying the streaming sites that people use. That people are like, oh, just use this. You kidding me? You had to use a VPN for half of it, and even then, and I don't like VPNs. I've never liked VPNs. They do not like computers I own either. They always cause blue screen of death and all that. And just the VPN experience, it wasn't fun. I wasn't enjoying watching the games on there because sometimes the feed would just die and you have to reload. Sometimes they're like, oh, if you want to watch this game, you have to set your VPN to, I don't know, Japan or Hungary or wherever. It's like, this is ridiculous. This is not a fun experience. It's just because the NHL will shut down streams. The NHL will find a stream and they'll shut it down. And that's what was going on with a couple of the streams for those games. So there was one game I couldn't watch. I had to actually listen on the radio because I didn't feel like installing the VPN and setting it to a country that was nowhere near where I was just to watch one game. It just, the NHL can make this work. They can make this work. And AT&T Sportsnet /Root going out is a shame. The one thing that that frustrates me is we know that with broadcasting there are a limited number of jobs, and it feels like they dwindle all the time. And it feels like with the regional sports networks going out, this is going to cause more people in the it's a form of entertainment, sports and entertainment and all that. I just don't like calling it sports and entertainment because I'm thinking WWE, but it is, right? You have your entertainers, you have, your play-by-play guy, you have your color guy, you have your people in the studio. And more of those jobs will disappear as time goes by unless the NHL figures out a way to make these broadcasts work. Now, here's the thing. Here's the kicker. The NHL has to find a way to make this work where they're making money, because Ballys wasn't, and neither was AT&T Sportsnet through Warner Brothers Discovery. That's why they're out. They're, bankruptcy here, Chapter 7 here, and they're gone. So the NHL has to figure out a way to make money. And I really think that a subscription service along the same lines, or let's another way to look at it might be this. So you want to watch all of the Edmonton games. You live in Florida. You're like, you know what? I'm a transplant from Alberta. I want to watch all the Edmonton games. You should be able to go onto the NHL site. You should be able to subscribe. And at the subscription, they say, hey, so for $10 a month, you can watch all 32 teams. I just want to watch Edmonton. All right, $4 a month, you can watch Edmonton. And that's it. And you get access to regular season and playoffs. And I think that can work. I absolutely think that can work. And I mean, you can decide that in market, out of market, you have different rules. They can do that. That's fine, as long as it's not a blackout. So meaning that if you're in Edmonton, maybe it costs you more than if you were in Florida to watch maybe something like that, right? But they have to figure out a model that works, because otherwise you're going to end up with a situation where it just doesn't work. And then all of this money that the NHL's throwing in the air and talking about how it's record revenues, it disappears. And then what really scares me is this. So we've now got ads on helmets, we've got ads on jerseys, we've got ads all over the boards, we've got the digital ads over top of the ads on the boards, we've got ads all over the ice. I still remember when there were no ads on the ice. We have got clocks on the ice when you're watching ESPN during a power play, which I still find distracting. You've got ads on the glass. You've got ads that now display during the game, where after a whistle, they're like, and now here's a message from Arby's, and it's right there. What really drives me nuts is when the play-by-play announcer is trying to describe the play we just saw, and then in the background you'll hear a voiceover of a commercial that's going over the play-by-play announcer or over the color guy. I really think that NHL needs to figure this out. There's so much advertising being crammed into games, and that's without even touching on the gambling aspect, which I guess if they start broadcasting all this, they can tie gambling in with it as well. They could partner up with one of those gambling apps they love so much and say, hey, during the game, we have a link right here, and you can scan a QR code and you go right in and you can go right into your game. And so for people who like the sports gambling, they could make it even easier for them and maybe lessen a little bit of the ads for us. Because my concern is that if these networks go out and the NHL's losing money on that, we're going to get even more advertising. And I mean, do you start putting ads on the visors of the players on the ice? I mean, they have it, put on the glass. Why don't we put it on their visors too? Obviously, I'm kidding, but really? So, at any rate, the NHL's got a business model, which is not just the NHL. Major League Baseball, the NBA, they have this same issue where regional sports networks are going under and they're having to take control. The NHL should get ahead of the other networks or the other leagues and really take proper control over this. The NFL has been ahead of everybody when it comes to this stuff. So figure out what they're doing right, how they became this juggernaut with North American sports. Because I'll say this, and I want to say this in closing. It's not that the NFL has the best league or the best product, but they have the best presentation. Every play in the NFL feels important. Every team mostly feels important. I say that, I was going to say every team, then I'm thinking, no, there were usually a couple of teams that I'd be like, I'm not watching this crap. But the NFL has always had a way of presenting their sport as a really big deal that you'd be dumb to miss. And so while you might get one play every 5 minutes, sometimes it feels like it anyways, it feels like a big deal. The NHL needs to feel like a big deal. They can do this if they take control of this and they make it work, and if they try to emulate some of what the NFL is doing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And let me know your thoughts. Who do you think produces the game the best? Is it Ballys? Is it MSG? Is it AT&T Sportsnet? Is it Sportsnet in Canada? Why are there two different Sportsnets? Your guess is as good as mine. TSN, for me, it would be TSN. MSG, Sportsnet would get honorable mention there. But let me know your thoughts. There are a lot of really good broadcasts. I'd be very sad to see broadcasters lose their jobs, but in all likelihood, there's going to be broadcasters that lose their jobs, and that's not great. But let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.